If you do want to say something, we'll hold you time, about 10 minutes at the end. You can drop something in the chat and we'll mark you down. I'll make sure I call on you at the end. That, Annalise, you want to do roll call?
Yeah. And if you're online, if you can't hear us, let us know. Very excited to have a lot of people in the room today. So let's run through roll call. Sheriff Massey.
I am present.
You. Caroline Cruz.
Present.
Debbie Jones. Present. Eric Davis.
Present.
Oh, Eric, you snuck in. Yay. Erica Fuller.
I am present.
Fernando Pena. Frankie Hupie.
Present.
Julia Mines. Julia Seekin. Katie Jokinen.
Present.
Commissioner Minty.
I'm a present.
Maris Alden.
Present.
Monta Knudsen.
Present.
Moxie Loeffler.
Here.
Moxie's online. Mike Obiero.
Present.
Karen Dursey Martin. Syra Marila Simmons.
Present.
Syra. Stacy Andoniadis.
Present.
Stacy. Dr. Tim Lynch.
Present.
Tony Vesna.
Present.
Vanessa Nordike.
Present.
And then I think we might be without our non-voting members today. Is anybody here from Senator Reynolds' office? Or Representative Sanchez's office? I did invite them to come grab lunch, but they both had too much to do across the street. Judge Rick Maiden is not with us today. And I think Ebony is not joining till later. Okay, so Ebony will join us later for her presentation. We have quorum.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for everybody to be here. We have a packed schedule today. As always, we'll have our director's report from Annalise. We need to review and approve one last amendment to our bylaws related to chair, vice chair recommendations to the governor. We'll have a legislative session update. And then we'll have a presentation from, I believe, Ebony and
Abby.
Abby from OHA to talk about the Behavioral Health Resource Network update, and then we'll have public comment. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Director Dahl.
Thanks, Tony. And I really appreciate everyone online who rolled with us today. We are still working out the kinks of hybrid meetings. This is a beautiful space we are in. I'm so glad for everybody who could be here in person today, but we'll continue to work on our hybrid abilities. So I just have a couple of updates today. We have one current opening on the entire commission, our juvenile director seat. And that nomination has moved forward from the governor, Jennifer Surley. Is that how we say Jennifer's last name?
I believe so.
Yeah, Jennifer Surley from Washington County Juvenile Director. The nomination will be in front of the Senate, I believe, next Monday. Frankie's term ends in May, so Frankie's not leaving us yet. Frankie is the longest serving commissioner right now. So this Frankie will have done a full 8 years. So we will, yeah. We'll have to do an in-person before then so we can celebrate you. But we have started soliciting applications for that position. So if folks know, and that is, the seat is now a district attorney, defense attorney, or assistant attorney. So, I'm working with the governor's office. We have 2 more governor's appointments that are agency representatives. You all will remember that we added 2 positions. Right now, we just have Ebony Clark from OHA. It used to say that the OHA behavioral health director particularly had to sit on the commission, but now it's 3 agency representatives. So, and one of those has to be from a youth serving agency. I'm in the process of talking to the governor's office and our agency partners about that. Staff update. We will have a new executive support specialist starting February 23rd. Yay! Yes, we are all really incredibly excited about that. And those of you who have reached out to me about anything administrative, you will appreciate that as well. We're very excited to have this person start. And then just a couple other quick announcements that are these are kind of more comprehensive plan, but things I wanted people to be aware of. You remember as part of our infrastructure piece and the comprehensive plan that one of the big things that the governor had asked us to do was to continue doing the cross-agency substance use disorder financial analysis. We rolled that out with our agency representatives in January at our quarterly state agency meeting. A memo from the governor's office will be going out. I think it's in my inbox, so it'll be going out today or tomorrow, directing us and the state agencies to cooperate in that substance use disorder financial analysis. So that will kind of continue our goal of having transparency about the funding that is supposed to be going to substance use disorder and where it goes across all of our agencies. We're pretty excited about that. Starting to engage with our local alcohol and drug planning committee. So those of you that have those or are involved in those, we're starting to talk to folks, find out what they think might be helpful, what might not be helpful. We're going to do a survey to all of the contacts that we have. So if your LADPC is meeting and we haven't met with them yet, please make that connection with us. So that's pretty exciting. Last, I'll just do a quick settlement board update because I usually do those. As you all know, we talked about this last month. The settlement board did meet in January and decide to allocate $13 million to the Measure 110 Behavioral Health Resource Network program, which is part of the reason we have Abby and Ebony coming here today to talk to us about the direction of that. I think it's fair to say Fernando also serves on the settlement board. It was a really tough decision because that money is flexible, but there's only so much of it. The settlement board has $10 million still to spend in this biennium, and we'll be coming back together in March to talk about how to spend that. It was a 5-hour decision. I know that was emphasized in our last meeting, but we got there. So those are all my updates. We're gonna do the bylaws and do a legislative session update before and Ebony join us at 2 for their presentation. So we'll have time to talk about legislative session and for folks to share when we get to that. But do folks have any other general questions, Fernando?
Not a question, just a comment. We deliberated for a long time for that allocation. But the deliberation wasn't should we or shouldn't we. The deliberation was how much should we versus not.
Right.
With the intention being the settlement board sort of in collaboration with this group and the strategic plan on building a system of care, the recovery-oriented system of care that we're all talking about. We've really held on to that, the settlement board as what we're trying to accomplish over the number of years. So it was about how providers whole enough right now to keep working without losing the overarching mission of the long-term strategic plan we're trying to build out. I just wanted to be clear. It wasn't that we were debating should we give money, it was
Right.
really how much while still having enough.
I appreciate the clarification and the work you're doing.
Any other questions or comments before we talk about bylaws?
On the settlement board, so that it seems like there was a portion that went to harm reduction through the clearinghouse. Is this kind of fill in the treatment bucket? Treatment and recovery, or that 10 million should recovery and prevention, should they be prepared to get something to the settlement board, or what's the process you want to go through?
So the board hasn't determined that yet. The original goal in January was we came together in person for the first time That was actually the first time that board came together. And the intent was to have some of these longer term conversations about allocating, and if there's things that we have stood up that don't have sustainable funding, how do we support that over the long term? But instead we spent the time on behavioral health resource networks, and it's a little bit harder to kind of always put those into nice neat buckets the way we have. So something for us all to think about going forward. There probably is a little bit of prevention in there. So the board has to come together and talk about what does that mean for the rest of the allocation. But I do want to emphasize your point, Debbie. The board did allocate what it saw at the time as its kind of this biennium's harm reduction allocation to Save Lives Oregon. They did that up front. And then, of course, the 30% that comes off the top, that always goes out.
At this, I only bring this up because also members that were also involved in AMPAC. And we recently had some funding that was like surprise. And it was all these state agencies had an opportunity to apply for it. And it's like that transparency, and I think that's something that Annalise, you and staff have been the gold standard for doing that in the settlement board. And so I'm encouraging.
Yes. Oh, this is secret stuff. Thank you. I just threw it in the back because I didn't want to leave it out here.
And here's,
So,
Okay. John Pugsley giving away secrets.
So, yeah. I feel like sometimes they're secrets, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So thanks for including us in all that. I feel like with Fernando and you, we have, easy to ask questions and get straight up answers. So appreciate that.
All right, well, let's talk bylaws. I know, really exciting. So folks who remember last month, we changed a couple of provisions about the committees, and mea culpa, I had forgotten about this one, and Tony reminded me that this was a change in House Bill 2929. So just to remind everybody, and this was a request of the governor in House Bill 2929. We had not originally put this forward, but under the new law, now the governor will now select one commissioner to serve as chairperson and one commissioner to serve as vice chairperson. So in consultation with the governor's office, I want to propose a process for you guys today that is reflected in these bylaws and see if it works for everybody. I'd like to propose that the ADPC recommend at least one commissioner for each position. And putting forward the idea of at least one, this was in conversation with the governor's office. This gives us the, my preference would be one. But if we are ever in a situation where, folks are not sure, or, there's multiple candidates for chair, and the commission would like to put forward multiple candidates and let the governor choose, this gives us that option. But it would keep our procedures for electing the chair and vice chair the same. So the way under the current bylaws that we haven't changed yet, it has to take place at a regularly scheduled meeting. Or if it is like something special, called by the director, it has to follow all the state laws. And anyone can nominate themselves, and we do it by a vote. That is how we've done it in the past. It doesn't change.
or if we have a departure, like if I left early or moved out of town or something like that, gives us the flexibility to make a recommendation then.
Yeah, am I moving it? Which one am I doing here? So, so this is the proposed new language. So we would keep our current officers, chair and vice chair. I did not put up here, but it would not change. So currently it's 2 years. We elect a new chair or vice chair. We have an election every 2 years. So their term starts in July. And we have it set so that it's going into the next long session. So like this, for this July, we will have an election. 2 terms max. So Tony is terming out of his chair position. And then the bylaws also currently say if Tony steps down, the vice chair steps in. And then we have new recommendations. So these are the proposed bylaws. All of you folks who are commissioners, you have the red line document in your email. I think, isn't it? And I think it's attached to the calendar invite. So if you want, we can bring that up as well, if that's helpful. So the nomination stays the same, the voting stays the same, the terms of office stay the same. If there's a vacancy, that all remains the same. The only other change was just to say if an officer resigns at any time, that they will deliver that written to me, to the director and to the governor. So, questions, comments, concerns? Fernando?
Yeah, is it, intentional that
Yeah.
the term for the chair, for the direct chair, ends right after the start of the new strategic plan, or is it just that's how it just lined up? Just happens to be that how it
I
lined up?
think
or is it-
that's just the way it lined up. I don't remember those things being connected.
No, we talked about it more with legislative session.
Yeah.
That this way we would make sure for a long session and a short session, we would have the same chair. Which is also going to be true always of the comprehensive plan, because if we continue on a 5-year cycle,
Right.
right? It also coincides with when our report is due to the legislature. So our biannual reports are due to the legislature July 1 of each even year. So that way, like you have a chair who kind of reports through their term. And then, you know, either you elect them again or you have a new chair going forward.
I ask only for one of the conversations we've all been having around the strategic plan was looking at it as like a building block for the next strategic plan. Having that zoomed out view for continuity across decades, basically, of systemic building. It might be worth it to entertain the idea of not having those matchups so closely for continuity's sake, or somehow that like the vice chair steps in for a time. Basically what I'm saying is so that like we're not changing the plan at year 5 and also the director. And then all of a sudden we have a whole new leadership that has to get caught up to the plan that we've been working on. So that's,
Well, this doesn't apply to the director.
I mean, sorry, for the chair.
Right, yeah. So the, yeah.
I know we will
I
have.
think
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
To be
yeah,
clear.
sorry.
There's a, I can put in your box, yeah.
You guys would sit there together. I'm talking.
That's all right.
Yeah, but that's really, and it's more just something to be mindful of, that, so that we aren't having, I mean, it's the reason Congress set up with a 2-year and a 6-year cycle, so there's kind of a rotating with continuity. So just an idea.
So Annalise? So does that mean, I mean, I think it looks clear, but it's not clear. So a vice chair, they cannot be selected for the chair because they already did maybe 2 consecutive terms.
No.
I mean,
Oh, wait,
or
go
can
back-
they
go back to
be,
the term.
or is it the actual position? So a chair could only be a chair for 2 consecutive years and vice chair. But can a vice chair become a chair and go for 2 consecutive years?
I don't think the intent, so this is, I mean, you were here. I don't remember that being the intent, but perhaps we need to clarify that a vice chair could serve 2 terms and then serve as chair for 2 terms.
Yeah, I think if we don't state it that way, it might come back on us. Because then that would go back to it being, my whole concern is a lack of consistency. Because I truly believe in order for things to stabilize, there has to be some longevity. And when you change stuff, that's where I think things, when people come in with their maybe separate ideas, that's where things fall apart. And I was just talking to Debbie about this in terms of what happened, in my opinion, with the Addiction and Mental Health Division, is when there was a big major change. Now we're trying to get it back. And so I think we need to be very clear, because if we were be able to select the vice chair to be chair, then there's that consistency will stay.
So I'm gonna back us up a little bit. So I'm hearing that folks want to talk about the terms of the officers. Do folks, before we could talk about that, do folks have concerns about the proposed language to make recommendations to the governor?
So just so I have it clear in my head, we're still having our elections like we always would, and that kind of just becomes like a recommendation to be codified by the governor?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
That sounds good. I mean, I've seen other bodies do that where even though there's another higher authority who makes the final decision, they want to know from the decision-making body itself, well, who do you recommend? I don't go to the meetings, you go to the meetings. So you are in a good position to make a recommendation to me, the final say-sower, on whether this person is showing up, participating, engaging, doing all those things. So yeah, I think that makes sense. And I've seen that in other contexts.
Okay.
The Oregon State Bar will, for example, we would interview candidates for the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. But we don't have the final say-so on that, but the governor would obviously be interested in what lawyers think about a lawyer who wants to, or a trial court judge who wants to be one of the, the highest positions in the state judicially. So it's the same thing. She can reject it if she wants, but traditionally they've always appreciated, governor's offices have always appreciated the input from the bar.
Is there any interest in discussing a motion to approve that piece? And then we can go to officer terms. Yeah, and I drafted, I pulled. So this is a potential motion to approve that piece about the governor, the recommendations to the governor.
I move to approve the amended bylaws as reflected on screen, proposed 2.926 document. Enabling the governor selected chair and vice chair to serve as officers following recommendation.
And thanks.
Second.
Fernando seconded. Then do we have any comment? Not hearing any, we'll move to a vote.
Okay, great. Sheriff Massey. Her, Caroline,
Yes.
Debbie,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Erica,
Yes.
Fernando,
Yes.
Frankie,
Yes.
Julia. Julia join us?
No, she's having an issue.
Oh, Katie,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Maris,
Yes.
Monta,
Yes.
Moxie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
Shira,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Vanessa.
Yes.
Right, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, so you want to go back to terms of office. To show the actual bylaw language, if you want to pull that up. Yeah, you'll have to unhide it. Oh, because I added it.
So is there anything in the current bylaws that states a commissioner can serve multiple officer positions?
I wonder if we can fix the language by saying office and not officer. Something like that, so that it's clear that it's the office that has the two-term limit and not
Yeah.
the particular person.
A great point.
Mitch just lost his sharing capabilities. One moment, please.
But I think that resolves what Caroline was asking about.
Yeah, I believe so too.
Yep, that one. So this is the bylaw language right now for terms of office.
Frankie, are you proposing that we say the the terms for each office shall commence
Yeah,
instead of terms for each officer
yes.
for the office? Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely clarifies that, yeah,
Office.
the position of the person.
Oh, like
gonna
it
do
won't let you. Terms for each office shall come up. I mean, we could add a clarifying.
That last sentence will have to
Yeah.
be changed
For
to.
each office at the end of the sentence.
After up to 2 consecutive terms, we could say for each
Yep.
office.
Yeah, for each
Yeah.
office, that would work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
And then up in the first sentence, instead of officer, say office.
For each office, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think that gets to Caroline's issue. Fernando, did you want to propose a change in the term?
Well, if it's every 4 years, so it's 2 consecutive term series, it's 4 years with a 5-year plan, and that should have 1 year across or 1 year of overlap at least. At least it seems like it would work that way unless we have that, like that.
Yeah, and
Which happens.
the other consideration would be the, who the commission puts forward as a recommendation. And it'd be the responsibility of the commission to attempt to carry that continuity with their recommendations for the chair replacement.
I guess my biggest fear is that we end up with now third administration. And then the governor puts in, that governor puts in someone who basically is to come and undo everything. And that can happen anyway.
Yeah, there's no.
If it's kind of taking place in the middle of something, it's a bit harder to.
Sure.
But again, that's.
I think you have to build safeguards into place, and I think that does that. Because if it's person dependent, then that could change quickly, and then. I mean, beyond the concern about if someone's appointed into that role, is the other piece of it where you could have half of your commission resign to the chair and to the governor and saying, we're stepping away because we no longer believe in the work. Because you cannot do the work that you signed up for, so.
You are all governor appointed.
Right, yeah.
I know, I'm just saying, it's the safeguard. You want to build it, right? Like, it's scary what could happen. We see it every day. So you spend so much time doing this work that is so meaningful. And if it's stripped to the bones where you can't actually do it, then why spend all the time?
So back to you, Fernando. Are you okay with the timeline?
Yeah, like, it's unfortunate because I agree with literally everything Mike said, and we aren't in a position to really control a lot of testing, so I do think there's, if the plan is 5 years, and we will end up with some sort of continuity at least for 1 year, unless there's a resignation for that position. So I think that's the best guardrail we can hope for in this moment. Because like you said, we're all ultimately just talking about.
And you all have 4-year term, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah,
Right.
Frankie served 8 years, right? Like, I think, and you're all expected now to all serve 8 years. No, I'm just kidding. But that is, I mean, that is a great
Yeah.
deal of continuity.
yeah. I mean, if the question is, I'm okay with this way. I think that clearing up the terms of each office does a lot more of that, the work. It does a lot of that work already.
Caroline, does it read to you then that it's for, that somebody can serve as vice chair, then they can serve as chair?
If it's clear to you all. I just know that I was gonna elect Debbie to be the chair because I wanted that continuity. And so, but then the way it read, it looked like that wasn't possible. So this corrects it then. But I was trying to wordsmith it, but if it's clear the way it is, then
We have 3 attorneys on the committee.
It makes sense.
And our attorneys wordsmith this real quick without too much redlining.
Well, and I think we're laying the record here that the intent is that this only pertains to the office that the person holds.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, the
Yeah.
attorneys, that's what I'm
yeah,
talking about. Okay, intent is clear, language seems clear. Is there anybody who would entertain a motion?
I move to amend the language as it appears on the screen.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we can move to a vote.
it's your concern. I'm trapped into the word charity.
okay. Sheriff Massey?
Right here.
Oh,
Right
good. We're discussing the motion to amend the bylaws related to term of office to make it clear.
Yep.
Okay, and you're yes.
I am a yes.
Thank you. Caroline? Debbie?
If it means what I said it is, then yeah.
Debbie?
Yes.
Yes. Eric?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
Mando?
Yes.
Frankie?
Yes.
Julia? Did she join? She didn't have the teams. Katie?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Maris?
Yes.
Monta?
Yep.
Oxy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Shira?
Yes.
I really hope I knew. Stacy?
Yes.
You, Tim?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Thank you. So, well, so the motion passes. You have updated bylaws. Again, thank you. I'd like to propose that, so that, you know, the term, as you can see here, it goes through June. Just because it takes, the process with the governor's office takes a little bit of time. We wanted to propose to folks that we have our vote on the chair and vice chair in April. Anybody have any objections to that?
Good.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, everyone's favorite topic right now. the 2026 legislative session, right across the street. I will kick this off by saying, a big part of the reason why we're having this meeting in Salem during short session later this week, I think Bo's going to talk about it later too. On Thursday is the Oregon Recovers rally. So our attempt at something of a recovery week this week. If you have not been in the newly opened, it's not fully opened, but so much of it is open. It just looks amazing. It looks so beautiful. I can't believe the basement looks like that. So I really encourage you, to hop over there after this or definitely later this week. So I'm going to kick us off with just a kind of a brief reminder, and we talked about this a little bit last time about what our role is at the ADPC. And what your role is. You will see attached to the invite is a full PowerPoint that has more information for you, including links to information if you're a nonprofit, that Tim Rourke prepared for all of you. And we're going to share these with all the committees too. So this is our little, right, we're trying this out for short session, obviously in long session comes up a lot more, but so, just starting from the beginning, ADPC is an executive branch entity. We're not an advocacy organization. I think sometimes that's a point of confusion with folks. And so, we have a role in public education, in support of coalition building, right? Like sometimes people will reach out to us and say, gosh, I have a lot of concerns about this build, if anybody's working on it, and, maybe we're connecting you with 4D or the Council for Behavioral Health or the counties. But we can't do grassroots organizing. We can't do like voter engagement. Obviously, we can't litigate unless it's something the Attorney General's doing. And we really, by default, and I'll talk about the exceptions to lobbying, by and large, we can't really do that. So we can, again, engage in public awareness. So publishing issue briefs and reports, conducting community engagement. So like when we did the roadshow, we invited local electeds to, get their input and to engage them on our work. That we can do. We can't support or oppose a specific piece of legislation, and there's a tiny little asterisk to that of when we can. But with the governor's permission, if a legislator asks us questions around a topic, or a legislator says, "Can you come and talk about the comprehensive plan?" Because maybe, in their mind it aligns and we can talk about that. We can provide data always, obviously. We can provide feedback to the governor, and with the governor's permission on SUD related like budgetary policy. That's part of our statutory job. So the little asterisks, we can go to the governor and ask for permission to support or oppose something. It's pretty rare. But if it's something that is, and the governor may say no, if it's something that's controversial or looks like it's, not really going to proceed forward. So the point of all this is like, as an executive branch agency, while our job is to set the direction of policy for executive agencies and to make recommendations to the governor, it is not within our authority to go to the legislature and lobby on things. We're not an association. Many of you are parts of associations, thank goodness. You can do, and again, this is in the full PowerPoint called Policy Advocacy 101 attached to your calendar invite. You can testify in anything on your own behalf. You can, work with your association. So as I go through this update in the next 20 minutes, if there's any point where somebody wants to kind of jump in and say, oh, the Association of Counties actually is opposing this. I'm just picking on AOC, Kelly. Right. Feel free. Our job is to educate all of you, right? And for us to track what's happening, right? So maybe we're not weighing in on things, but we're tracking anything that is substance use disorder related. Any more general behavioral health or healthcare legislation that would affect our work, we are tracking all of that. So I don't want you to think that like the staff are kind of sitting back and twiddling their thumbs. Wes is our legislative coordinator, and I serve as our legislative director. So we are, viewing everything as it comes out. So are there any questions about that before I kind of get into the nitty gritty, like, hey, want to make sure you know about these things?
I kind of have a question and it gets into the nitty gritty. So I'm thinking about, some of the SUD system changes that you have up here. And so say like our prevention committee, if we were not identifying a bill, but we wanted to, as a prevention committee, and attaching it to our strategic plan about underage drinking, would that be something that we could do at this time, or is it, don't even kind of tip your toe in that water?
I think what you're asking is just because there is a policy topic that might be in our comprehensive plan and is also in the legislature, that those two things are separate. So
Okay.
we advise on policy all the time. We talk about policy all the time. That is divorced from what happens in the legislature.
I mean, I think an example of that would be, I'm trying to think of when this has happened in the past, because I know it's happened, maybe there's something to your point that's like directly, and I mean, 3321 was a good example, right? Well, that's a good example of where that came from, advocates outside.
You guys had to keep us, you were very impactful.
Right, like that came from
Keeping us
advocates
in
outside,
line.
but I think there have been definitely things with the comprehensive plan where it's so aligned with it.
Yeah.
Right, that maybe the committee say, ADPC, you really need to really push this. I think this happens more during long session when there's a little bit more time. So you may say, this is something that it's exactly what's in our plan. You need to weigh in on it. And we take that to the governor and say, it's really important for us to support this. It's, maybe the dream world where it's within available funds and it's aligned and everything. And the governor says, yes, you can support that. That happens. Absolutely.
More often than not, what will happen is like the planned priorities are going to be created by essentially the community and subject matter experts who have an interest in the different parts of the plan, right? And then something will either align with that or disalign, right? And the ADPC, when there has been disalignment in the past, before Annalise got here, and maybe a little bit when you're here, it's been asked by legislators to come present an analysis on the bill related to the plan, right? But it's in my experience, it's been very fact-based,
Right.
and not position-based, right? Like, oh, we're not endorsing alcohol tax, but there is some research to show that it is a preventative measure,
Right.
right? But it's not an explicit endorsement. But that doesn't mean that you, as the prevention subcommittee and your members, if there's something in alignment, that you can't yourself go and say, this attaches to the state's plan without being in your official capacity as an endorsement from the ADPC. That happens all the time. We spent all this time working on the plan together. It has really great stuff in it. And when I leave the ADPC meeting and I talk to legislators, I'm going to say, you need to work on the state's plan. Have you referenced the plan? These things are in our state's plan. It was created by all these smart people, but I'm going to do it as a person,
Right.
not as the chair of the ADPC. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I think mine was, because we've talked, especially in the, can't remember our official name, the substance goes, the alcohol and the cannabis, that we specifically had, Mara, that you kind of headed up, that I think helped kind of inform maybe some of these. And is it like, when do you continue to educate people that, there's a lot of work in this that happened, or is it better to do it kind of on your own time as opposed to as a committee?
So again, the committee and the ADPC, if what the goal is to go out and support, we'll take Senator Reynolds' bill, for instance, right? Like that is, we're an executive branch agency, so we can't support that, but you can do, like Tony said,
More as an individual.
you
within-
can advocate for
Gotcha.
that, right?
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
say, yeah, this isn't, you know. I will say the comprehensive plan belongs to the state, right? So that you're also sometimes going to hear people that say, yes, this is in alignment with the ADPC plan. And you might be thinking, that doesn't feel right to me, but it belongs in the public domain at this point. So you might have that experience as well. And let us know if that happens.
No, that's helpful. I mean, sounds like more on the cautionary, but that opportunity to educate and raise awareness without lobbying or mentioning bills or things, but just continue to what's in the plan and why it's important. Great, thank you.
So, there's a handful of bills that, this, is not everything, and I have a couple more to mention that are not on this slide. You have these slides, there are links to the bills in here. Everything is going very fast, right? It's the short session. It's a month long, so, something can come up and be gone in 1 week. But just wanted to run through a couple of these. And again, folks, feel free to raise your hand if there's anything that you want to add. House Bill 4083, we heard a little bit last month from April Roman in the governor's office about this. This is the governor's behavioral health workforce bill that came from the Talent Council. There are, I will note, the folks who were here for the development of the comprehensive plan will remember that we did make some recommendations to the Behavioral Health Talent Council. And some of that work has ended up in recommendations, not in this bill, but in other recommendations for some work for us to do here at the ADPC. And so we're taking a look at that, and we'll be kind of rolling that out to the committees, et cetera. So this isn't everything in the Behavioral Health Talent Council bill, but does focus on streamlining some oversight and supervision for the behavioral health workforce. So just wanted to make sure that folks knew about that. That has already gone through committee on the House side and will be on the House floor next. That's how fast things are moving. House Bill 4070. I think not everybody has kind of tuned into this 147D. It has some provisions related to behavioral health treatment access, crisis stabilization, and there is a particular telehealth provision in amendments to make sure that folks providing telehealth are in-state, licensed in-state providers. So just wanted to make sure folks were tracking that one. House Bill 4028 relates to audits of behavioral health providers and parity reporting. So our agency partners at DCBS, the Department of Consumer and Business Services, who I know people always forget about, that is one of our agencies. They're the ones that oversee commercial health insurance. We have Maris on board now to help remind us of how important that is. And that bill, one of our goals of the comprehensive plan is to make those parity reports more important, quite frankly, to folks. So commercial health insurers as well as CCOs have to do these mental health parity reports, and a lot of people spend a lot of time strengthening those, but they don't get talked about a lot. So just wanted to flag that one, since that is part of our strategy to make parity important to people. So those are kind of on behavioral health updates. Budget adjustments, I very intentionally put TBD up here. I'm sure most folks heard last week that the revenue forecast came in a little bit better than the last one. But the budget need is still much greater than the amount of revenue that we had. So, and it's, probably going to get worse next biennium. So it's really still TBD. We're holding back a little bit of our budget to prepare for that and continue to stay close with all of our agency partners so that if cuts are taken, we're prepared and flexible with how that might affect the comprehensive plan, and where we may all have to shift going forward. So stay tuned, I guess is what I'll say. I will say that the marijuana revenue forecast again went down a little bit. So that continues to go down, and that will also affect the behavioral health resource networks. So that's not great news. So those are budget updates. I'll pause there before I talk about SUD system changes. Does anybody want to add anything about any of those bills? If anybody's association or anybody is say anything?
Quick
Yeah.
question, I thought I read something about a bill around reducing the administrative burden for providers, behavioral health providers. You guys recall seeing that, hearing about that?
Shira, go ahead. There is a bill.
I think it's 2020.
Sorry, I'm a little sick today. There's an element of that in 4083 that requires OHA to develop a team that will be responsible for understanding and analyzing the administrative burden that's placed on behavioral health organizations and reducing that burden. So that's in 4083.
Thank you.
The only bill that I don't see up there is House Bill 4115, I believe. And it is an attempt to reduce some administrative burn by standardizing how often credentialed individuals have to go through a state background check. And the problem is, I'm sure the other treatment providers on here can attest to, is that when you get a new staff and they have to go through a background check process before they can be approved to deliver services, it can take months, 6 months sometimes, even if the person came from agency across the street. So you have to redo, it's like, so that bill is attempting to get at that somewhat.
And that's for universal credentialing? That's the same one?
No, this one's about just the state background check process, that little piece specifically, but there is the uniform credentialing, which is in 83.
As well, yeah.
Yeah, to align with more of the medical providers practice, how they do it.
And 4028, as I understand those CCO audit provisions, is to try and bring some alignment and uniformity to the audit process, which would also reduce administrative burden.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll run through the SUD system changes, and then I think Ebony and Abby are going to join us at 2. Yeah, so this second one is a lot. There's a lot in this one. House Bill 4146, folks will remember we talked about this last month, the ready to drink cocktails moving into the grocery stores. We talked about the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission took a position to oppose it. I think our partners at OLCC have done a really good job making sure folks understand the revenue consequences of this. It has not been scheduled yet. It is in-house revenue, which means that it can be scheduled past the deadline. So I always like to remind people of that, because sometimes you have a deadline and you're like, oh, we're done. No, not necessarily. So, but it hasn't been scheduled yet. House Bill 4139, yes, please.
In addition to the revenue, I am on the OLCC. And in addition to the revenue concern, what I think is maybe as interesting to this group or more so is that there's a real concern over access being increased to youth if it's sold in the grocery store. So OLCC feels strongly that our liquor retailers do a really good job, or for the most part, and that would be compromised in the grocery store.
Thank you for adding that, Kelly. Yeah. And I'll remind folks that maintaining the liquor control model is a foundation in our comprehensive plan. So I think that there's concern about taking any distilled spirits and moving them into the grocery store. House Bill 4139, I can't remember if we talked about this last month. We knew this one was coming a little bit. It has some adjustments. Some of the provisions would close some holes with industrial hemp, and add a revenue stream for that. But there has been, and I think flag this one for me, actually, House Bill 4139, because it would divert some funding, depending on the total, from what goes to the Burns now to the illegal marijuana market enforcement grant program fund. I'll just leave that there. So that has had a public hearing. It has a lot of feedback. I will say that bill has a lot of feedback. We'll just leave it at that. 1548, and let me see what's that scheduled for a work session. Oh, I will add on 4139. So that's in the House Economic Development Committee. It is scheduled for a work session this week, but it has to go through Revenue and Ways and Means. So it has a long path. Senate Bill 1558 is Senator Reynolds' bill that she talked to us about last month. So I won't go into detail on that. That does have a public hearing scheduled for tomorrow in Senate Early Childhood and Behavioral Health. She was hoping to be here today, at least for lunch, but could not come over. Senate Bill 1573 would restrict syringe service program locations as filed to 2,000 feet of a school or licensed child care facility. This is one we're watching closely for several reasons, but particularly since syringe service programs are not currently regulated in Oregon. So putting that into statute right now in this federal environment raises some questions.
That one would also allow citizens to like submit a civil penalty against syringe exchange programs. Like syringes are found within a school and stuff.
I have a question. Does anybody think that walking through the towns where you live and work, that you can actually tell when you're within 2,000 feet of a school? I mean, I can tell when I'm in 100 feet, but I just wonder how that distance was chosen, and it seems like a very risky, large amount of distance. Thanks.
And we run into that a lot in the criminal realm with possessions, deliveries, et cetera, within 1,000 feet of a school. And like, they get caught with it even if they've got like 1 foot inside of that circle, even though if they have no idea that the school is there. And sometimes, like, we've had cases where they were being followed and then the officer followed them and didn't stop them until they were 1,000 feet within the school. So it's like, it's dodgy when it's that far away.
Also, 2,000 feet is 0.4 miles.
Yeah.
So I'll add one more thing and then we probably need to wrap up for Ebony and Abby. There is no like public directory of schools and childcare centers. So to Frankie's point, there's really there's not a central public place to see that information. So that makes that very difficult as well.
Yeah, and there's some organizing happening outside of here, and you could go and look at the public comments of any of these bills and see who the opposition and proponents are. If you had ideas to weigh in or wanted to join forces on either side independently as an individual person.
Yeah, that's a great way to end, Tony. That's a great way to end. Yeah. And if you have questions about anything else, I was going to mention a few more, but I know we are at time and I see Ebony and I'm guessing Abby is here too. So we should probably,
Let's pivot.
pivot.
Hey, Director Dolphin, Abby, you guys here? You ready? Can you share? Do we need to share for you?
We're going to share for
Got
them.
you.
Do you want to kick this off, Tony? Yeah.
Okay. Little history, quick history on the burns in connection with the ADPC. The Measure 110 funds was a ballot measure that had language that pre-described how the state was going to administer the funds. It created the Oversight and Accountability Council, and then they were tasked with volunteers overseeing the implementation of it. There was effort between its inception and now to kind of link the ADPC and Measure 110 funds like more closely together, similarly to what we did with the opioid settlement dollars. But it was a highly politicized bucket of funds. There was a lobbying group that was here that was very determined to have it roll out in a specific way. And due to some of those dynamics, we never really got the close coordination that some individuals would have liked to see. Fast forward to now, there was some changes in how the Measure 110 funds are managed, and that previous oversight body, and correct me if I'm wrong, Abby or Ebony or Annalise, but is now more in an advisory role. And I am hoping, and I know the commission's hoping that moving forward from now, we can have a little bit more coordination and collaboration together as bodies. That sound
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Cool. If you guys want to add anything, Ebony or Abby, go ahead, and I'll pass it off to you.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize I can't be there in person this afternoon. I'm Abby Stamp. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Executive Director of the Behavioral Health Resource Network program at OHA. And I'm here with Ebony Clark, Director of the Behavioral Health Division, and I'm going to kick us off and then pass it over to Ebony. You can go to the next slide. We got a handful of great questions from Annalise, and our presentation directly addresses some of those questions. So happy to dive into this and see if what discussion or questions y'all have afterwards. So first, as Tony already noted, there has been changes with the Oversight and Accountability Council. The council up until December 30th, 2025 was the decision maker and decided all of the funding and how much went to all of the organizations. And with the change for 2026 and moving forward, the OAC is an advisory capacity, giving OHA the responsibility to make those funding decisions. OAC per Senate Bill 610 advises and makes recommendations on funding priorities and funding distribution. And the last thing it will advise on is any educational campaigns that the authority chooses to engage in to make folks aware of burn services. And so this to me is a real change for obvious reasons, but actually I think it's a change of how OHA and the OAC work together. Because the OAC will be recommending and advising OHA, it's a real opportunity for me and my team and OHA as a whole to take the opportunity to more deeply educate the OAC on the real nuts and bolts of the burn program, our data collection efforts, getting presentations from different grantees, looking at how the organizations are networking and working together collaboratively in each of the counties. And so we're starting to queue up a lot of our presentations and discussion based on that. Brand new, so we've had one meeting with 5 new members. They elected co-chairs, and our next meeting this week will be a much deeper get to know you, some introductions and training as well, actually. So that one won't be a public meeting because it's all training and get to know you stuff. But we're really excited to have a lot of old faces, a lot of the old OAC members were able to continue along, and the addition of 5 new members as well. And we'll continue to collaborate with those folks. And we meet twice a month, and they'll continue to advise. And because the funding is, the funding cycle doesn't happen until 2029, it gives us ample opportunity to collaborate and find new ways of working together. The next question Annalise provided was about mitigating funding impacts. As y'all just discussed, the cannabis revenue does continue to decline. And I'm sure everybody knows, if you don't already, we had an announcement late last month about a 14% budget reduction. And that is for all 234 grantees. And part of that reduction enables us to create a contingency fund. And for all intents and purposes, that is a savings account that we'll be able to hold on to. And as the revenue fluctuates, like Annalise just noted, there is already another dip. We're not going to have to continue to say, oh, it's not 14% reduction, it's 16, 17, 18, because we have those contingency dollars. And the goal is to have the funding, every disbursement every year, to be as consistent as possible until the next funding cycle. And that's what the contingency funds will be able to do. And that will help mitigate the negative impact of falling funding. And at every turn, we are just sharing opportunities with different grants that might fall into the book of business of the Behavioral Health Resource Network providers, and sending that out to our large listserv, and just to keep networking and giving folks other opportunities to more diversify and braid their funding. I will be really honest and say that is limited, but anytime something comes across our inboxes, we're forwarding it out and making sure that everybody is aware of that. I want to hand the mic over to Ebony to talk a bit about the OHA prioritization process.
Yeah, and I just think, so one of the things that, I know that many of y'all probably know, but I think it is important to continue to reiterate the reality of the climate that we are navigating across the board when it comes to thinking about how we sustain our behavioral health continuum of care. And, and so the reality is that we have declining or diminishing funding from, the federal side or Medicaid side. We have walked through a couple different constraint or budget reduction exercises at the direction of DAS and LFO. We anticipate when we really start to see the implications of HR1, we anticipate an influx of individuals dropping from health insurance and relying on our safety net service. We anticipate we'll see an influx of individuals that are thrown into crisis and needing support from some of our crisis services. And so part of the strategy that OHA is working through is working through kind of an agency-wide prioritization effort to really think about and kind of take a fine-tooth comb to say, okay, so for all the things that we're doing, does it make sense? Is it promoting and helping us get to the outcomes and the aims that we're looking for? Does it align with, key priorities, whether, specific to, Governor Kotek around addressing chronic homelessness and houselessness and homelessness, or helping us to expand workforce? Does it help us, expand community-based resources so we have folks not languishing in the state hospital, just as an example? Is it helping us be able to make sure that we're working within the priorities of ADPC? And so, so we're really having to, take an honest look at ourselves as an agency to understand, what does the data tell us? Does this make sense? And then for things that we're like, no, actually, it doesn't make sense for us to continue, or we probably need to pause because this area over here is more of a priority. Then from there, it's looking at, as a result of the identified resources and or staffing within OHA, what besides repurposing resource to support some key areas, such as, let's say, 2005 as an example, what dollars are then freed up, and then working with Dr. Hothy and her office to then say, of the freed up dollars, here's, what they want to allocate, in addition to, quite frankly, reconciling to, the budget for this next biennium. And so I know that's a little bit wordy, a little bit long-winded, but just want to also just make sure that we're being clear and transparent around just the climate that we're having to navigate. And I think that in the past, we had, I think, a little bit more flexibility and opportunity to say, oh, we can leverage dollars here to fill the burn gap. And, it's pretty sparse, but nonetheless, we're still putting everything on the table and trying to look at, what can be considered, because there's a lot of need and a lot of difficult decisions ahead of us. Abby?
We have,
Thank you.
where we
Thank
wait.
You guys want questions now, or you want me to hold them until the end?
Can we walk through the end? And I'll make sure that I'm not rambling in mine, because I want to make sure we get through all this to then just be able to answer questions and discussion, if that's okay.
Totally fine. Yeah, we can do it. Just hold your questions till they're done with their presentation.
Great. Thank you. Ebony, the next two slides are for you.
Awesome. Okay. So, look, I already got ahead of myself. So again, diminishing resources. And so again, we're looking at, federal impacts specific to HR1, when, and what are we anticipating in terms of, HR1 with less folks enrolled in healthcare. That means that there's less or reduced revenue that can be leveraged or billed to support, sustain, and enhance our current kind of continuum of care or network of services. But again, we are leveraging all opportunity. We did just walk through our phase 26 block grant renewal. And so we do have an ask out to that team to explore if there is funding. And if there is funding in phase 26 of the block grant, if it fits the criteria to be able to look at, are there any block grant dollars that we can leverage to be able to fill the deficit for the burns? And so again, that's just an example of like all the rocks, all the cushions that we're looking and exploring in terms of solutions and strategies. I will say that, it's going to be important, just as Abby said, for us to be intentional when we think about 2029 in terms of, us being strategic. I think, again, we all know that the funds that support the burns is dependent on, the cannabis tax, and we continue to see it decline. And so we're going to have to be strategic on then how do we make recommendations for how to administer and sustain on a volatile revenue source. And so I think, quite frankly, what we need is sustained funding, or we need an opportunity or a bucket of funds where we can leverage to be able to continue to cover the deficit. And so again, appreciative that, we have a small contingency fund, but we have to have a broader solution than just that. And so that's recognized and understood. I think it's important for us to continue to look at how we, using existing lessons learned, information to help make sure that we have a strong strategy to inform the future process. And I think that, and I always say this, I feel like we know that each community is unique. And our goal is to not say one size fits all. We're not looking to take a cookie cutter approach, but essentially looking at, how do we also make sure that we have opportunity to fund burn models that truly fit the local need, recognizing that, what works in Clatsop County isn't going to be the same model for Multnomah County, just as an example of that. But I think, again, it starts, and thank you, Chair and Director, for bringing this conversation forward. And quite frankly, we are committed to continuing to make sure that we are also stepping into some intentional conversations with you all, especially making sure that what we recommend and what we set up for 2029 really truly is aligned and works in concert with, you know, the ADPC priorities. And so we have opportunity and we have time now to be thinking about that. And then the last thing I'll just say is that in terms of just, you know, for me, I think, what are the things that we can do that doesn't cost money? What are the things that we can do that doesn't require a legislative appropriation and or decision? And so we know that for the current OAC that there's a standing member. So I think, again, it's us thinking about how we can continue to leverage the connection and the relationships and go deeper, and also wanting to hear perspective from those that, you know, are out in community providing services and wanting to leverage and understand, you know, what is the current experience so that then we can try to solve and bring enhanced solutions for this next go round. And so I think, you know, it's, you know, we believe that we can, you know, lean in a little bit more just around kind of current set touch points, but definitely want to hear from all of you too, just because if y'all have additional recommendations of ideas and thoughts that we can be doing proactively to help shape the strategy for 2029, definitely want to hear that. And so I'll pause and hand it to Abby. Anything else you want to add before we move to the next slide?
No, I just want to, no, yes, not no and, yes, I would love to hear from the ADPC members. I don't know if that's now, Ebony, or you want to hold on to that until the end.
I say let's hold to the
Great.
end.
Great. So then we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Go ahead, Ebony.
All right, and so SUD continuum of care. I think the other pieces is that I think that folks, when we do the work, whether we're thinking about providers, whether we're thinking about kind of the system holders, whether it be CCOs, CMHPs, the state, I think we have to continue to be more intentional around, remember, when we're thinking about the burns, not siloing or working from kind of a compartmental standpoint. But for me, you know, the burns are a part of the SUD continuum of care. And so for me, I, you know, want to make sure too that we're continuing to lean in a little bit deeper to try to help be the connective tissue between CCOs, between CMHPs, between the local ADPCs to just really make sure that we are, again, working and rowing in the same direction, bringing all of our great ideas forward, but then also just, you know, making sure that it helps us be informed of, you know, the challenges that so that then folks aren't surprised or blindsided. So I just think that, you know, we're committed to and we'll continue to reiterate that we are a part of the SUD continuum. So it's not the burns over here. I think, again, you know, as I spoke to earlier, there's the future legislative efforts. So, you know, we're already in short session. And so now it's really thinking about what and how do we leverage current tables and efforts between now and the end of this year. And when I say year, December, to then help inform anything and any recommendations that would be important to bring forward in the long session. And so again, it starts with making sure that we're communicating in advance opportunities specific to rulemaking and or additional engagement efforts. And so again, I think it's going to be important that there's these collective conversations so that then we can collectively, you know, move forward a recommendation that might not be able to happen without any type of legislative mandate. And the last thing I'll just say is when we think about local needs, you know, one of the things, you know, we try to be mindful of is that we're not over surveying providers. You know, we're trying to be mindful of not adding to administrative burden and trying to find, various ways to make sure that we can get broad perspective and recommendations and voice. And so, we have, and every so often we'll do kind of various surveys to really get some information outside of then just kind of some of the various community engagement efforts as well. I talked a tiny bit about it, but again, looking at how do we increase the collaboration between CMHPs and Burns, and I think too, it's making sure that we're leveraging the table of AOCMHP, because again, we have one continuum of care, and we have key system partners that help uphold and lend to that continuum of care. We also are trying to make sure that we are stepping into community and really hearing from a cross section of individuals, just because I think sometimes obviously there's limitations when there's only virtual opportunity for connection and engagement. And at the same time, we're walking through budget deficits. And so, we also have been frozen on some of our travel, but, again, we are committed to making sure that we're, trying to increase our connection and community time with folks. And then again, the same thing with the collaboration of CJC and Deflection. I think we have limited resource, and it is important that between CMHPs, between CCOs, between the deflection efforts and then the Burns, that, like I said, we're working in concert and working to help inform to try to promote and achieve the outcomes that we're looking for specific to individuals who are impacted by SUD. So, I say all this to say that while we're working through trying to navigate the current budget deficit, we're also trying to be strategic and intentional to position ourselves to continue to enhance our efficacy for this next go around. So next slide, please.
I'm going to
All right,
cover a
Abby.
bit. Yep, I'm going to cover a bit about the audit. Annalise, you had posed some questions about our most recent Secretary of State audit, which was completed in December 2025. And a high-level overview of OHA's response plan. In summary, recommendations 1, 2, and 3, OHA agreed with. Recommendation 1 is we agreed with it, and it is in progress. And recommendation 1 is about creating 3 different roadmaps for a few big projects. One is integration of the Burns into the larger SUD system of care, as Ebony just noted, a roadmap for program evaluation, and a roadmap for outreach. And we're we've already launched that work. It's been assigned to project manager. Anyway, it's up and rolling and moving, which is great. Recommendation 2 is about better clarity about the definition of culturally and linguistically specific services. And that has a 2028 deadline because it has particular application to the next funding cycle, and making sure that the definitions are really clear both to the applicants and to the reviewers. In recommendation 3, not only do we agree with it, we have completed that recommendation, which is to do some interim client count reporting. So reporting aggregate client counts through, I don't want to get too detailed and too in the weeds, but we have 2 different reporting systems. One is through grant software called Submittable. And through Submittable, we're able to change and tweak and modify what people report. We try to do that as little as possible to decrease administrative burden. But per the Secretary of State's audit, we did add client counts for specific service areas. And that is to help be a bridge while we are waiting the full deployment of roads, which will be the full client level encounter-based reporting system, and that will be launched in July of this year. So this gives us a nice bridge to be able to really understand the scope of what the providers are accomplishing. The recommendations 4 through 6, we did not agree with. And those recommendations are really about data, about a baseline study, and about IT infrastructure. And some very high level overview. Recommendation 4 was about completing a baseline study. Brilliantly, or of course, the SOS team really wanted to understand what's the difference between today and pre-measure 110. So what difference did the investments make over a 5-year period? And that is a fantastic question to ask. Our health policy analytic partners indicate that from their expert opinion, there is really not a way to do that. If you recall, that was during the COVID-19 pandemic, where service access was incredibly different. We saw overdose rates changing dramatically, and we saw executive orders and atypical rate adjustments and investments from the Opioid Settlement Board and Save Lives Oregon. There were so many things happening during that time period where we would have been able to accomplish a baseline that our HPA partners said, our health policy analytics partners just said, it's really not possible to do. Recommendation 5 was about publish a yearly performance report with standardized measures based on that retrospective baseline. We can't do the baseline piece, but we are going to be doing regular reporting, not yearly, but quarterly. So we are building a quarterly data dashboard that as soon as we have enough data submitted and validated and synthesized and analyzed and posted, this will be available on the BIRD website and updated every quarter with key performance indicators and metrics and expenditure information. And roads, when that comes online, will also be integrated to that dashboard as well. And the last recommendation, recommendation 6, is about implementing data sharing infrastructure to support integrated care pathways and to monitor the continuity of treatment and recovery services for people with SUD engaging with the BURN program. So again, fantastic recommendation, but simply not technologically possible. And then OHA actually doesn't have the funding to be able to do that. So that's a high-level summary of the audit. Ebony and I are presenting to the Joint Legislative Audits Committee tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock for more details on this. Next slide.
And then just for time, Ebony, I want to leave 10 minutes for discussion, which gives you about 5 more minutes right now.
Great. This is the last slide. It'll be pretty quick. So there was also questions about how are y'all managing the 2027 funding reduction, since we did have the email go out about a 14% reduction. We have asked our grantees to complete a scope of work survey, and the scope of work is a Smart Sheet survey due by the 11th, which is here in a couple of days, which will really tell us what folks are having to do in terms of adjusting their scopes of work and milestones to meet this budget constraint. And we are pushing out communications just as fast as possible. As soon as we get final green light to send communications out, we make it happen. And we are also ensuring that subsequent to or pursuant to the executive order like Governor Kotek issued last month, 2601, to prioritize housing and behavioral health, that we are asking our grantees, if at all possible, to avoid housing reductions. And in terms of the contingency, right now it's at about 7.5% of non-opioid settlement prevention treatment recovery board funds. And so that is carved out. We are really grateful to the board for contributing $13 million to make that 14% reduction, not 27%. And let me note that every time that the forecast reduces, the contingency also has to tweak a little bit as well, because it's all incumbent on the same, all dependent rather on the same funding stream. And these contingency, how it functions and the level that it serves is per our budget office advice, and all of the funds are for grantees. So we will never go through a long-term funding process and just sit on the money. We need to make sure that we have a little savings to be available for grantees in the next quarter and the next quarter and the next quarter. So it's not going to be used for administration or any other functions. And so just to be crystal clear about the function and purpose of a contingency fund. And that's it.
Okay, thank you guys. So we got about 12 minutes for some questions. I know there's a question that Katie put in the chat. I think it's the last comment. If Ebony or Abby, you want to respond to that? Is it a question? Is it a statement? Looks like more of a statement.
Yeah.
Sorry. The statement, not a question.
Well said.
So Katie says, she's gotta hop off, she won't be around. The burn model presumes a baseline level workforce and infrastructure that doesn't exist in Eastern Oregon. Coordination can't substitute for services that aren't there. There's disconnect between regional governance structures and actual community voice, especially in frontier counties. Participation doesn't always translate into influence. Eastern Oregon needs a differentiated burn framework, one that accounts for geography, workforce scarcity, cross-county travel realities.
Yeah, I think that falls in line with what I talked about in terms of making sure that, we are supporting and making recommendations around a strategy that allows for local solutions, because there can't be a cookie cutter approach. And so I think that's understood. And again, as I said earlier, we have to solve for some type of sustained funding to fill in when we have these revenue drops based on the funding or revenue forecast, because we understand that you can't build your house upon the sand, and quite frankly, to expect organizations and providers to sustain programming on volatile revenue source, that's not realistic. And so that's understood too, and something that we continue to communicate and hope that we can see some solutions and strategies come forward in the long session.
I just want to add to what Ebony shared, is that we are right now just bound to legislation, to the statutes, and to rule. And so we, at the burn program level, really crave people's feedback for how the structure does or doesn't work, particularly for at the provider level. My East County grant administrator has shared some of Katie's concerns. And so the more feedback we can get from our providers, the better we can inform any potential tweaks or fixes to legislation to allow that type of flexibility, which right now is simply not possible.
Thanks, Abby. Fernando, go ahead. And I'll get you, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you, Ebony and Abby. Again, thank you for all the work presenting to us. And I was wondering, you all may not be the holders of this information, but I'm sure wondering if we have a sense of how much the highest acuity clients that we're facing, the homeless, PMI, SUD clients, how much of the total they're using in revenue, basically. If you were to say, like, basically the per cost for the highest acuity clients, and then how that overlays the total expenditure on the system, because often those clients are the ones who are draining the most resources from the system. And so the big picture of those, so we can actually get a sense of allocations in a limited funding environment. So yeah, that's the question. I don't know if OHA has that, or if you might be able to point us into the right direction.
And because it was muffly on, I don't know if everybody who's online could, it was breaking up. So can someone closer to the mic repeat the question? Because it sounds like a really good one.
Panda was wondering if you guys have data that segments out the client served based on their diagnosis and acuity status, to look at, are there certain people with higher acuity using more burn funds versus people with lower acuity who may not be using as much? Did I got that right, Fernando?
Well, that burn funds, but not just
Oh, not just burn
Yes.
funds, but funds in general at
Yeah.
OHA.
allocated towards the SUD. So basically, like, the
Yeah.
idea is if we could start seeing the amount of people that fall into the highest utilizer category and how much they're costing the system, to perhaps get a better peek into how we're getting money across the system.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I don't know, because Abby Aaron's not on this call, huh? But I think here's what I'll say, and then Abby fill in the blanks. I think that the kind of data metrics system that we're continuing to implement is going to help us be able to start to better understand the population, the utilization to continue to drive at strong policy decisions. I think that what I will say is that, from my perspective, Abby, like, you're closer to this program, so you can fill in the gaps or be like, nope, you're wrong here, Ebony. I think that when, the burn programs that are tracking diagnosis, to me, I think it's, the ones that are either doing the assessments and or actual treatment for individuals that have diagnosis and meet the medical necessity criteria for treatment services. And so I think that there's a subset of some burn providers where we can start to understand that data, especially as we, fully step into implementation of kind of our new system, which is, underway between now and, the end of the year or early spring of next year. I think that I think that there's a way that we can look at that to a certain extent. But Abby, what else would you add to that?
Thank you for the question, Fernando. And we don't know right now, but the road system, which is OHA's statewide client level encounter system, is rolling out for burn partners. There's some tweaks needing to be made to that system. There's going to be trainings happening in the spring, and also EHR configuration, that's the word I'm looking for, is taking a lot of time, but all providers are going to be required to input each and every burn encounter into roads starting in July, with a little bit of a grace period for the electronic health records technical challenges. And that's going to give us a lot more data. I do think it's going to be a challenge, I think, to assess that very high level macro question you're asking about the cost and system impact for really high acuity and high needs folks, because a lot of the burn services are really outside the scope of traditional Medicaid and traditional insurance covered services. But we will have some diagnostic information and other information about levels of care and wraparound services for burn encounters specifically that will be able to be crosswalked with other collected data by OHA.
Thank you. Debbie, go ahead. I know you had a question.
Yeah, I've got two, but I'll let you choose which one you want to go with. And I think I know which one it is. You had mentioned under mitigate funding impacts, and you said OHA prioritization process. I wasn't really clear, and maybe this is something you can get to at another time or in paper. What OHA's prioritization process is, how they go about that. And then my other one, again, it's not meant to be a gotcha question, but it's just the concern I have all the way around, is the fact that we have lower marijuana tax revenue. Is that considered a good or a bad thing? Because I think that's, we went through that with tobacco taxes were down and there was kind of a panic, and then how we're paying for wildfires is kind of like we've got to make sure people are using Zyn pouches. So just that overall concern when this happens, I think it makes it volatile revenue source, and I don't know, I'm just curious. And again, it's not meant to be a gotcha question, but just maybe thoughts of how we get out from underneath that.
And was I allowed to pick the question, or was it for them, Debbie? You're looking at me.
No, I think
I think we'll steer away from the gotcha question and let's focus on the prioritization process.
Tony,
quickly.
no, I'm gonna answer both questions. The prioritization effort, and I failed to mention this too, that there was also a mandate by the governor. And so I know that Dr. Hoffey actually will be presenting, I think in the next 30 plus days, where the agency landed around prioritization at kind of the multiple junctures or phases. I also believe that each agency had to present in the last series of legislative days around kind of what the prioritization process entailed and where folks were at today, or agencies were at to date, understanding that it's kind of somewhat of an iterative process. But what I can do is I will, get some information, and Annalise, I will send it, package it up and send it out to the group, just so that then y'all can kind of formally see, what the direction was, and, just where, the agency landed in terms of possible kind of solutions or recommendations or proposals, I should say, based on the directive. So I can do that. And then, I think that, as I said earlier, we recognize that programs, organizations, providers can't, as I said, build their house upon the sand. What I meant by that is that folks can't sustain programming on up and down revenue. And so my recommendation, as I said earlier, is that we have to figure out, and the we is above my pay grade, but there has to be a solution, as I said earlier, where there's some type of funding that then fills in the gap when there's a reduction. And I think what we have to do is, and I will continue to echo this and be thoughtful in my recommendations, is as we start programming that's, let's say, from a pilot phase and or from a revenue source that's volatile, and as we start to move forward, we have to get to sustained funding. And so I think the question is, collectively with the legislative body, it's, are we ready to look at moving the funding for Burns into a more permanent and less volatile revenue source? And as Abby spoke to a minute ago, I think that as we really start to see the implementation of roads and submittable, we're going to have a lot stronger data that will really tell the story, speak to the impact that then further justifies how burns are really, from my perspective, a critical and essential piece of the puzzle in our continuum of care. Because I think, so that's, it's, to me, it's not a got you question. It's the reality of, like, there's going to have to be a different solution. And I know that, there's a number of legislative policymakers. I mean, I know that it's on everyone's mind. And so I'm looking forward to, what this next session brings. And I think, again, it's going to be critical that, we are working in concert with you all, critical in making sure that we really understand and can represent the stories of folks utilizing the services, understand and speak and bring forward those that are actually in community providing the services as we move forward, because burns, I think, are critical.
Thank you.
Can I keep you guys for like 5 more minutes?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think, because we got some more questions, I'll scrap the committee updates, and something's really important, you can email it. Caroline, I'll get you, and then Eric, I see your question in the chat, and I'll get you as well.
I want to respond. Can you hear me okay? Because I don't know where the speaker's at.
Oh.
So Ebony, can you hear me? Abby? Okay, then must be right there. So, you said, what do ADPC members see, hear, and recommend? I'm going to tell you what I see, what I hear. I don't care if you guys want to hear the recommendations or not, but this is what I see. Ebony, you talk about the house up in the sand, going up and down, so it's not stable. Well, what I see is the fact that we don't even have a house. We don't have a plan. We don't have a foundation. When I built my house, I had the plan. I know exactly where everything went. We don't have a plan any longer. So when you start looking in terms of what I'm hearing, is the fact that, well, what is the counties doing? I mean, I know what the tribe is doing, but the counties don't even know how much money is coming into their counties. They don't know in terms of the fact that the local alcohol and drug planning committee no longer really has a strong role. The county commissioners don't have a strong role. I don't even know, and I've asked several times in terms of an organizational chart, in terms of Oregon Health Authority. I don't know if it's behavioral health systems now, if it's the health systems now. I don't know who's where. I don't know who's doing what. And I know the county people, this is what I'm hearing from them. They don't know that neither. And when you start asking in terms of what we encourage burn grantees to collaborate. Encourage is the fact that they don't know where they belong. You know, we had Burn that came in as a whole separate entity that didn't need to go to the county commissioners, did not need to go to the local outcome planning committee. The coordinated care organizations have to do, they're responsible for prevention, but there's no education, there's no, scope of work in terms of what prevention means for the CCOs, so they do what they need to do. And so we don't even have a foundation. We don't have a plan. That's what I hear. That's what I see. Until we could get all the entities together and operate underneath one house, one plan, we're not going to go anywhere. I'm fortunate enough to be on the Alcohol and Drug Planning Committee. I'm also on AMPAC. I'm also on the Burn or Accountability Board, whatever we're calling ourselves. So I see all three, and I don't see us all working together. I see us trying to work together. But until there's a mandate that every county has to come in and have one comprehensive plan, I don't think we have a lack of money. We have a lack of coordination and a lack of a plan to see where that all fits. And so that's, I don't need a response. I'm just saying what I see, what I hear. And if we don't get a plan, we don't get our house in order, we're going to always have deficits. And if we're always relying on sin money, that sin money is going to go up and down no matter what it is. The lottery could go up and down, beer and wine tax. Well, we have, they want to do cocktails in the stores, but they won't increase the beer and wine tax. I mean, seriously, there's so much wrong because we don't have a strong foundation. And that's, you don't have to respond.
Erica, we get.
And I want to respond. I know I don't have to, but I'm gonna respond. And I think that you're absolutely right. And I think that, it's and y'all aren't at these tables, but we are having these same conversations with CCO behavioral health directors. We're having these conversations with with AOC and MHP. And, we will, and Abby can, attest to this too. We'll continue to look at how we can be get a plan around how we start to at least bring folks together to have some of these collective conversations, just because I think that, and I don't want to diverge. Just one example is that, we recently walked through revamping the county financial assistance agreements. And again, we recognize that there needs to be a single plan because it's a single continuum of care. And I think that you're absolutely right, Carolyn, that we need to have some conversations to make sure that everyone collectively supports the effort and the strategy, so that then, because there's some areas around planning that are called out and have to be followed by legislative statute. But if CCOs, if counties, if OHA, if Burns are all able to say, hey, here's what our recommendation is, I think that there's some preliminary conversations and engagement efforts that we can look at trying to help facilitate to get to trying to have a unified plan or one plan, so that we're, intentional and not siloed in all the things that you spoke to. So I appreciate that.
Okay, I'm going to try to get the last two questions. Erica Fuller had a question in the chat talking about
Yeah, I can go. I can go, and I'll try and make it quick because it may be more of just a comment. It just, what I'd heard thus far in the conversation seemed more sort of heavy on the CMHP and work with the CMHPs, and I wasn't hearing much about CCOs. Yet CCOs are really the primary funder of SUD services throughout the state. And we are experiencing a lot of issues there. So just for example, as a provider myself, prior to receiving the notification of the burn cuts, we're already facing, many providers upward of 30% or more in rate cuts from certain CCOs. And so this was a huge blow on top of that. So that and many of the burn funded projects are separate from, traditional Medicaid services, but a whole lot are not, or they're working in connection with. And so it seems remiss if OHA is not having very, connected conversations with CCOs about all of this.
No, I think, and Abby, I'll let you add to, I think that, there's a lot of interconnectedness, or what I like to call the concentric circle. And then there's the pieces where, we know that the burn funding, for example, with treatment, is to support individuals who are non-insured. And so, what we have to continue to, figure out is how do we make sure that for individuals utilizing services and they're seeking treatment and they have Medicaid, for example, how are we, leveraging that and making sure that, there's seamless continuity in helping someone get to the place of being able to step into and stay in treatment. So there's that side, so that then we can be intentional to show that, like for those that are funded for treatment through burns, it's clearly for these folks who don't have insurance. But then I think about housing, and I think about, some of the housing resources and or flex funds that come through CCOs. How are we again working to be intentional, making sure that there's efficacy, making sure that there's not duplication, but also then working to be strategic around what resources leveraged around housing. And so I totally agree that we will continue, and I support the effort of yes, how do we make sure that burns are a part of the conversation from, policy to practice, and not just this silent, because it is very complex. And it's going to take time. It's going to take intention. And one of the things that I'll just say, and then I'll hand it to Abby to add anything, is that we are having conversations with CCO, like I said, the CCO behavioral health directors, and with CMHPs around how they are seeking out and working to invite burns into conversation and the table versus the other way around. Abby, what would you add to that?
To move us to public comment, it's the last 5 minutes, but I appreciate you guys coming today. What I will say is we really want to work with y'all. We want to work with the burns this time. There's stuff that happened last time where we weren't allowed, we weren't able to, I would say able to. So we look forward to working together. And I think as many people here have identified, and especially important with reduction in funds, is that we're using the resources we have at this state in the most tactful way. And that all we would ask that we work closer together. I do want to open up for public comment. Is there just one person?
So, yep.
Okay, Bo, I know you've been patiently waiting. Thank you. Go ahead and go to you.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll just be real brief. Thanks so much for y'all's leadership. I just wanted to talk about Advocacy Day this year. It's on this Thursday, February 12th at the Capitol. Right now, we have 898 people registered, which is almost triple the people that we've ever had in the past. So there's a lot of buy-in. Also wanted to talk about, just real briefly, our motto this year is protect and preserve services and funding. And so we appreciate the planning process that the ADPC has, and we included the strategic plan in our one pager and the things that we're advocating for in alignment with the stuff that y'all were talking about and having like this one frame to be able to work and be cohesive instead of having like all the silos and all that kind of stuff. So I think that that's going to be really beneficial. So wanted to throw that out there. Register at OregonRecovers.org if you're not already registered. I know there's some folks already registered on here and I appreciate that. But yeah, OregonRecovers.org, and I'll see y'all on Thursday.
And Bo's cooking hot dogs for ADPC Day, and anything else you might want, you just email him. He's ready to take 900 different orders. No, appreciate you, Bo. Great organizing. Couple last slides here.
Last slide. So we'll be back online next month. We're going to hear another OHA update. I promise you, not every month is going to be OHA. We love you at OHA, but Rural Health Transformation Funding update post-session in April. We're going to do our first comprehensive plan quarterly updates. I know you're all excited for that. We are excited. And then the chair and vice chair recommendation vote. And I will say, since we really ran out of time with OHA, if folks have follow-up questions, feel free to send them. If you sent me a question and you felt like it didn't get answered, just let me know and we can send the follow-up questions.
Annalise, can I just say thank you so much, y'all, for inviting us. We will, I know we'll be back. Maybe hopefully we can come back quarterly. Appreciate all of the conversations. I appreciate the candidness, just all of it. So just truly thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, Ebony. Thanks, Abby.
Thanks, Ebony. I just want to add a potential topic for the future.
Oh, yeah.
I love OHA's response today and the clarity they provided. I would love to hear more.